Now that I've spilled the matcha ginger tea, time to spill the real tea. Hello all. My name is SisterSharecrop, one half of the Dorian Corey Project, Western New York. And this channel I've named SisterSharecrop TV is a reflection of how the Dorian Corey Project operates and the chronicling and archiving of our local histories, which are often erased, which are often silenced in the greater whitewashed community of LGBTQ existence, as well as in our Black community, where often those of us who are Black and trans are in the quote-unquote LGBTQ community, where those of us are often erased and silenced and marginalized, more importantly. I would like to start this video for the channel, given that it is this past weekend of Juneteenth, of Father's Day, as well as, personally, my parents' wedding anniversary, my father and my late mother. As someone who has dealt with a lot of the issues that I'll be further expounding upon on this channel, I felt it was necessary to start chronicling my personal experiences as well as the experiences of other people that are marginalized as Black and trans in this community. This channel, as well as the Dorian Corey Project, is graciously sponsored by the Trans Justice Funding Project, which has allowed us to continue the work that we have done for nearly the past decade. And given that our main focus has been on archiving and chronicling our local histories and our local elders who have since passed and who are still alive, as well as our experiences in this greater community and the organizations and structures of violence that exist, I felt it was necessary to start. I personally have been apprehensive about wanting to quote-unquote spill the tea, simply because of the fact that not only is our safety of great concern, but of the reality of knowing that we are often sidelined, silenced, and marginalized, whether we are in the quote-unquote LGBTQ community or whether we are in the Black community. We often have to make ourselves hiding in plain sight, quite frankly. And given the reality of those of us who exist here in Western New York, I felt it was necessary for us to not only compile and chronicle our local histories, but also to ensure that younger generations and current generations and future generations may be able to access this knowledge and information. In this video, I wanted to start the channel with a vlog of sorts, in addition to the live streams that we have since recorded and will be uploaded here momentarily. Given that it is the weekend in which Juneteenth has passed and Father's Day has passed, I thought, why not talk about some experiences as a Black trans person who had to run away from their home, who had to deal with religious trauma, religious violence, from the greater community that I live in, as well as my family. The topics such as these are often hidden from view. We're often told that for us to talk about our realities is seen as harping on the past, that we should never complain, that we should never explain. Quite often, we are told that we should just get over it and that it has no effect on us, when in reality, given the statistics of those of us that are Black and LGBTQ, given our suicide rate statistics, our statistics of homelessness, our statistics of the lack of employment, as well as the reality of our lives existing in this society. We felt it was imperative to start the project while utilizing current social media platforms that exist, such as YouTube, such as TikTok, such as Instagram and Twitter. Again, my name is SisterSharecrop, and this is SisterSharecrop TV. Now let us dive into the vlog. I will be including some clips of my father speaking at a funeral of one of his late cousins. And in the clip, my father will talk about some of the experiences that he had with this elder cousin. And my father will explain how my cousin that has since passed, how he inspired his life. And I thought that was relevant for this vlog. Let me put the clip in now.
Until recently, where he graduated the highest of his class and was the commander of the whole platoon in military school. So you have to be a leader of men. You have to command men. They have to see their confidence and their surety in the men in order to be willing to follow him. So as I grew to understand what made him who he was, I grew to love him more and appreciate him. Billy would come in town and he would just pop up over at the house. And I love Billy's wit and his wisdom. I come to find out that he also was the captain of the ship because he took a lot of us out on individual fishing trips. I just found this out. He took me out to 1,000 Islands one time, just me and him. And I caught looked like the biggest sunfish in the world. And I had some stuff that I had put on there. I said, Bill, I'm getting straight. I said, why don't you want to use some of this? He always had a profound way of using those one-word phrases. He said, Donnie, I'm getting straight without strike. You know, I don't need that. So then, as we got older, I began to appreciate them living upstairs for me. Me and Kevin would watch certain movies, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Lost in Space, and various other movies. And as a young boy, I could have been no more than 10, 11 years old. And so these are my big brothers. These are the figures of men that I saw, because my father wasn't at home. And so just putting that out there for all the men and the boys, we need each other. Yeah. We'll either be like Cain and David, or we'll be like Jonathan and David. So I just wanted to share. I see the Sandman getting ready. So but I was able to attend. I was able to attend Billy's graduation and his wedding. Okay, and so he was an instrumental part in my life and me becoming a man and understanding what that meant. So I just thank everyone. I wanted to share some of that. And my last thought was, just bear with me, please. The song that was his theme song in 1966 was "Don't Mess with Bill." No, don't mess with Bill.
Marvelous.
Really alone. Don't mess with Bill. Thank you.
Now, welcome back. The clips that I included were from when I happened to think to bring a camera to a funeral, the funeral of a cousin on my father's side, which technically is my father's maternal side. And this funeral took place on Halloween of 2019. And from the clips that I happened to save and record, as well as certain conversations that my father were giving in the form of the eulogy that we did not record, I felt they were relevant for this vlog. One of the main remembrances and memories that I had of my father talking and relaying the memories of this dearly departed cousin were involving the fact that my father and my cousins, my male cousins, were oftentimes young black men who were interested in learning about histories, interested in looking things up, interested in using encyclopedias or dictionaries to kind of learn whatever topic at hand that they may have been faced with. And I found that personally in my life that has been the same kind of mindset I found myself in, which is partially how the Dorian Corey Project came to be. Given that we know of Dorian Corey only through the Paris is Burning documentary, and in that context of being in New York City, I thought, being up here in Buffalo and knowing the reality that Dorian Corey was actually born and raised here in Buffalo, New York, I felt that it was necessary for future generations, as I stated, and the current children, as well as adults and elders, to be able to put together our local histories that are often whitewashed and erased. And given that, if I were to ask my father or any number of my older family members, there would be hardly a doubt as to me wondering if they knew anything about black queer existence here or otherwise. And I thought it was necessary to really talk about, simply because, given a lot of the religious trauma that we have faced and dealt with, those of us who are black and in marginalized communities, it's peculiarly strange that we are often told that our own histories do not matter. We are often led to believe that our own histories do not matter by those very people in our families and in our communities. If you can excuse the birds chirping, it will let you know it is very early in the morning. But I wanted to chronicle this while I had the thoughts fresh in my head. I'm going to read some, what can I call them? Receipts, screenshots, if you will, that I found while perusing social media, that I found that was relevant to this video because it set the scene, or set the tone of how I felt personally and what I had been forced to keep inside because of not wanting to shame the family, not wanting to give the impression that I was whining or complaining, when in reality, there are plenty of people like me that feel the same way and are not able to express the pain and trauma that we are experiencing. So let me go to the screenshots. The first I want to pull up is one that I found earlier this morning, and one of my mutuals made a post that I commented on that really resonated with me. Their post was saying, "I wish I could utter Happy Father's Day without feeling the sting of the ugly truth that my father will never accept me, so I don't utter it." And I thought this particular post was interesting because it was reflective of my own internal struggle as someone who has felt and currently feels guilt over not being more present in the lives of my family, but also knowing that my safety and my mental well-being is more important. That sometimes those of us, we have to make decisions in which we choose not to be around people that do not understand us, won't take the time to understand us, and that will in fact make our lives more difficult. Given I've mentioned before the reality of my existence of being someone who ran away from home and was estranged from my family for many years, I thought that was particularly resonant with me, as well as other members of the Dorian Corey Project, given that we share the same similar issues of estranging ourselves from family members which prove to be toxic. And I wanted to talk about this with this post in particular because I know there are plenty of people here that feel the same way, that once they come of age or once they come out or if they're able to leave, they depart from their family members and in fact estrange themselves. And I wanted to examine that because, given my personal experience before the Dorian Corey Project was formed, as I was starting my quote-unquote career, being a Black trans youth mentor and peer educator at Gay and Lesbian Youth Services and Pride Center, Western New York, Evergreen Health, that reality is something that always stuck with me and currently sticks with me. Given that my reality as a youth mentor involved being around other youth, I was able to know that there are many youth younger than me who also live in this area and have parents in similar age to my father that are from this area, have similar stories of intolerance, of ignorance, of willful ignorance, and of, quite frankly, of the inability to love their children or their family members properly. And as harsh as that may be, I felt that it was necessary to talk about this, particularly on Father's Day, because quite often we are, as a society, told that we should forget all enmity, forget all trauma, all pain, for the sake of honoring parents that may or may not made our lives more difficult. And it's been difficult for me, personally, to talk about this publicly because there are so many assumptions about what people think I am and perceptions on what they think my reality is, when in fact, I've always felt shamed to speak about my reality, unless maybe I make a text post or commented on any number of social media platforms. And I feel, given my experience as a youth mentor and peer educator, that it's time that we start talking about these issues, simply because they don't seem to be going away. They seem to be getting worse, in fact. And now we have younger generations, people that are my age and a decade younger and such, that are still dealing with the effects of living in an intolerant society. Living in an intolerant society as well as being around family members and community members that want to be stuck in their ignorance and stuck in the past. Now I would like to pull up a second screenshot, a receipt that I came across right before I decided to gain the chutzpah to make this video. So this is a series of tweets, and I believe it's an account that I'm mutuals with, and I didn't really intend on having any receipts to read off of, but I felt they would help kind of steer along this vlog and what I wanted to talk about and the context. So this tweet thread is in relation to Father's Day. I'll say it until the end of time. Forgiveness has to be earned. It is a privilege, not a right. So many people call your pain holding a grudge because they'd rather have you forgive a toxic person instead of trying to understand what your grudge is even about. There's an entire "you'll feel better after you forgive them" narrative when it needs to be I should not hold toxic folks accountable because it's up to them to earn forgiveness and realize that they may never be forgiven. You shouldn't hold on to bitterness. Putting yourself over a toxic person who's never learned nor who isn't willing to learn is not bitterness, it is self-care. To anyone who found themselves in this situation on Father's Day or any day, I see you. And I thought the tweet thread was very much a microcosm of the turmoil that I've experienced and have lived with since I estranged myself from my only living parent. And it's been about close to a decade now, about 8 years, since I ran away from home, since I estranged myself from my family, since I became a youth mentor and peer educator. And given that most of my reality involved being around youth and being around other elders that were not around their family members, did not have lasting familial ties and relationships with their family, I thought that Father's Day would be the best time to expose that, simply because, again, we're often told that we shouldn't even talk about it, we shouldn't verbalize it, we shouldn't put it out in the open, we should, leave it in the house or sweep it under the rug, the common adages and adage about you sweep it under the rug, or, let's keep with it in the house and let it stay in the house, which seems to be a common mindset, not only in Black LGBTQ spaces, but in the greater community as well as society. And I wanted to address another part of my father in the clip that you just watched. My father mentioned about him having to deal with the reality of not having a father in the home, i.e. my grandfather not being around in the home to help raise him with my grandmother. And I do know from experience that the childhood trauma of our parents sometimes is never healed, and sometimes through generational curses get passed on to us and to any children we may have. And as someone who, again, has the bug of sorts of wanting to research things, wanting to find out why it is the way it is, and why, and what's the history of that, what is the etymology of it, I felt that was the reality of my personal life and my immediate family. Given that I did grow up around my father from childhood until I ran away, especially after my mother died, living with my father in a single-parent home, there were a lot of things that I became privy to that I started to understand that there were historical contexts that I, in some instances, were not getting from my father. For an example, remembering certain conversations or things that my late grandmother would tell me or would explain, and then in my own wisdom putting two and two together of how essentially life before I was born, how that unfolded. And as a result, I always used to say in the past that if my father had lived in a household with his father, if my father did not grow up in a single-parent household, I wonder, would he be more open-minded? Would he be more inclined to love me as my truthful self and not love me only as what they think I am, or their own perception version of me in their heads? Given that up until me running away from home in 2013 and coming out in late 2011, I knew that I had to live a lie in which I was certain that if I were to be my true self and explain that and exclaim it, would my parent even comprehend? Would he understand? Would he be open and willing to understanding more, or doing his own research, or being receptive to intaking any content that I would send his way, whether that be books or videos or documentaries of that, any of that sort? If I were to send this to him, would he be open and receptive to take this in and to read it, to watch it? Would he comprehend? Would he take the time to understand his children? And in a lot of ways, I felt like I knew the answer, given that I had lived with my father for nearly my entire life, that in some ways he probably would never get to that point, and I should probably focus more of my efforts on helping the youth in my community, helping the adults in my community, and doing things that were more beneficial than trying to convince my family or my father or my brother of my own humanity and personhood. And I know that is something that a lot of people here, locally, in my community, as well as globally, have to deal with. And I thought it was important to exclaim this because as part of the Dorian Corey Project, if you have watched that documentary and took in what it was about and what the now past elders have to say, a lot of the Vogue houses were formed because these black people run away from home or are kicked out of their homes, are told by their family members that they are not supported, that they do not belong in their house or in their family and in their communities, and so they're forced to seek kinship elsewhere. And I think that is the reality of my life. So thank you for being with this vlog, and thank you for allowing me the time to exclaim some things. I am SisterSharecrop, and this is SisterSharecrop TV. Thank you, Trans Justice Funding Project. I am again one half of the Dorian Corey Project, and I wish you a good day.
Until recently, where he graduated the highest of his class and was the commander of the whole platoon in military school. So you have to be a leader of men. You have to command men. They have to see their confidence and their surety in the men in order to be willing to follow him. So as I grew to understand what made him who he was, I grew to love him more and appreciate him. Billy would come in town and he would just pop up over at the house. And I love Billy's wit and his wisdom. I come to find out that he also was the captain of the ship because he took a lot of us out on individual fishing trips. I just found this out. He took me out to 1,000 Islands one time, just me and him. And I caught looked like the biggest sunfish in the world. And I had some stuff that I had put on there. I said, Bill, I'm getting striped. I said, why don't you want to use some of this? He always had a profound way of using those one-word phrases. He said, Donnie, I'm getting striped without stripe. You know, I don't need that. So then, as we got older, I began to appreciate them living upstairs from me. Me and Kevin would watch certain movies, Voice of the Bottom of the Sea, Lost in Space, and various other movies. And as a young boy, I could have been no more than 10, 11 years old. And so these are my big brothers. These are the figures of men that I saw because my father wasn't at home. And so just putting that out there for all the men and the boys, we need each other. Yeah. We'll either be like Cain and David, or we'll be like Jonathan and David. So I just wanted to share. I see the Sandman getting ready. So I was able to attend. I was able to attend Billy's graduation and his wedding. Okay, and so he was an instrumental part in my life and me becoming a man and understanding what that meant. So I just thank everyone and wanted to share some of that on. And my last thought was, just bear with me, please. The song that was his theme song in 1966 was "Don't Mess with Bill." No, don't mess with Bill. Leave Billy alone. Don't mess with Bill. Thank you.
Well, y'all bring it on back to church. Amen.
Take your time, young man.
Take your time.
It's hard on me.
Yes, sir.
It's real hard on me. He was hard on me because he loved me.